Southwest Freddy. Welcome to Inside the Pulse.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you.
What do you think people misunderstand about you the most?
I think the way I make a living could probably be the biggest misconception. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, that's a good question.
Why do you think that people think that is? Do you feel like people think it's something that is not traditional, or is it just they look at it and they're like, they don't see it as a real career? Like, what do you get from the community?
I think it's still just something that's still kind of like brewing as a career. I think it's never really had a structure. And I think as the years develop, it's starting to. And so I think a lot of it could just be very, very new, very fresh. So to kind of really educate people on it, it's something that's like, oh, well, he does that. But like, I don't know how much. There's no way to gauge how much money I make.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing is I feel like when it's something that people don't know enough about, they develop their own sense in their mind of what it is that you do without even fully understanding like the full scope of it. And that's why I think like now today in this world of, media and social media where people are able to kind of share their story and kind of connect the dots for everyone, it makes it a lot easier or possible, I'll say, for people to find people that are doing things, that are change makers, that are, making new lanes for themselves and then for everybody that's coming up after them, but then telling the storyline as they're doing it on social media, I think because for you, we grew up in the same neighborhood, Southwest Detroit. I'm assuming that's where you got your name, Southwest Freddy. Driving around the city, you see a ton of your murals all throughout Southwest Detroit. And a lot of them are, for me, very special because they represent our culture, Like when you started your career, did you know that was what you wanted to showcase to the world? Or was it like you were just kind of exploring and finding your niche in the marketplace? Like how did you approach that direction?
I think I subconsciously always just gravitated towards it, with whether it was movies or magazines or, TV shows. A lot of my inspirations did come from, Saturday morning cartoons and like just things that, as kids, like what we had access to, and I think I saw an opening once I was getting a little older, closer to graduating high school. It's kind of like started to kind of develop because I'd started to kind of like notice that other places had a lot of murals, other places had a lot of stories and a lot of rich culture. And I just felt like Detroit, we've always been kind of a small knit minority in Southwest Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the east side or you go to the west side or anywhere Metro Detroit, there's not a big Latino presence. And so I've always felt like we've just all kind of been like segregated there.
Yeah.
So
was there an artist that kind of like caught your attention early on, like a muralist that you were seen as not a reference, but kind of like an inspiration and kind of watching their career?
I want to say yes. I think graffiti artists mainly. It was T. Regis, Fel 3000, Maud, even Syntax at the time. All these guys, Sev.
And for people that don't know the difference between graffiti and a mural, how would you describe the two?
I think graffiti is the origin. I think graffiti was a blueprint to murals because I think graffiti is the ultimate form of expression in art. Any other art form has some kind of structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think graffiti was always like the rap of all music genre or rock.
That's a good way of putting it.
Where it's just kind of like break the rules. We don't care. Most of the musicians don't know like a minor key or a major. They don't know the difference between chords. They don't know how to read music. They're just out there creating. So I felt like, graffiti was always kind of frowned upon as like, the black sheep of all the art genres. And I felt like, to me, that was the one I most identified with growing up, at least in my neighborhood, because it was just like the grittiest of, we're painting with the paint we have and the paint we have access to, not, the fanciest, not, we don't have like tutors.
What kind of paint did you start with?
Dollar store. It was
really?
Whatever family, all the local dollar stores had. I would just like go to like any dollar store and be like, yo, I need one can to paint my bike. And like everybody was like, you had to be over 18 to buy spray paint. So you have to almost like tell the same story to every clerk and hope that they like sell you paint. And then you have to hope that the paint was good, because then it's like you go to spray it and it feels like yellow. It'd be like watery. It's like waste of $1.
So how old were you when you started?
I think my first piece I was like 12, turning 13.
Wow.
So I was young, man, and I think like
Do you remember where that was? It a mural or was it
graffiti. I
graffiti?
started off with graffiti first. I didn't
Mhm.
transition into murals until I was maybe like I want to say like 19,
Mm.
18 or 19 is like maybe when I did my first mural.
Hmm.
And
What was the first thing that you? What was the first piece you created?
I did this really shitty like mural behind Coogan's bar. It's not there no more, but it was like right next to E&I. It was like the bar right next to what's the corner restaurant? El Rancho.
Hmm.
So right next door is like a little bar. I painted the whole backside,
No way.
and it was like horrible, man. But it was like probably one of my worst projects. But it was and then we had done the sound station that was over there on Verner and Fernandad.
Mm.
Me and my buddy Matt.
Mm.
So Snow was like one of my main dudes that I came up with in graffiti, and he's the one that was like kind of broke me out to kind of do other stuff because he was just like probably one of the most talented kids that I've ever
Mm.
been around. at
Was
that
he,
age.
was Snow already doing murals at the time, and he was just trying to get you to see like a different approach to art, or?
No, I think we got the same opportunities around the same time,
Mm.
but he was just way ahead of the game. Like
Mm.
he's just the most talented kid at that time, man. He was just like drawing anything and everything. And I was just happy to be like the fly on the wall, like be around him, and like
Yeah.
he really just I think we kind of worked off each other and like kind of like inspired each other, but like he was always like I remember the first time I met him, like everybody had like talked him up before I ever even got the opportunity to know who he was. It was like, oh yeah, you guys gotta meet Snow. You gotta meet Snow. He's like the most like coldest. And like when I got to meet him, like it was cool because he was actually a really nice guy, man. Like it wasn't, like it wasn't his alter ego of
Mm.
Snow.
That's always the best when you meet people that you respect and they treat you with respect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. And I think the minute we met, we linked up, we just never stopped hanging out.
Mm.
And we just kind of like he started to get the opportunities for the murals
Nice.
and he just brought me along.
When did that happen? When did that transition from graffiti to mural?
I think we were like maybe just getting out of high school. Maybe I think we might have still been in high school. We might have been in our junior year of high school that time.
So like about 7 to 8 years after you started graffiti.
Yeah.
Wow. And then what was the first opportunity with the murals?
I want to say that one was that sound place. It was like a homie named Nelson. Like he would sell speakers and like car radios and
Was
amps.
it a commission piece?
Yeah.
Wow. So they found you guys and they made a proposition and you guys accepted.
Yeah, it was called Car Boutique, and I think Snow drew up all the letters, and we drew the guy's Jeep on the wall, and it was our first. I think if you look on Google Earth,
Mm.
you could still find like you go back to like 2007, 2008,
Wow.
you could still find the picture of the mural on like in the.
You said it was a Jeep?
Yeah, we painted the guy's Jeep on the wall.
Wow. And what was that conversation? He said, hey, I found you guys. I want you guys to paint my Jeep on the side of my building. Like, what was it like?
I think that he just let us he gave us complete freedom,
Wow.
and we just like kind of explored and figured out, all right, if this is our first opportunity, what are we gonna do? And so me and Snow kind of went back and forth on like what to put on the wall, and it was cool because I remember, R.I.P. But what was a writer named Loaf who lived right down the street on Fernandad,
Mm.
and I think he saw us painting the mural, and he was a graffiti writer, really well known graffiti writer from Detroit. He like came up and like gave us some graffiti caps. Mainly to Snow. He didn't talk to me. But it was like, like it was cool because that just lets you know the kind of community graffiti had.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like if anybody's trying to like better themselves, like the older heads will like really pay attention and try to give you some guidance.
Yeah.
And you didn't always get it, right? So the few moments you did, you learn to appreciate.
Yeah, man. That's something that's so interesting is that as you develop in your career, you start to notice who are those ones that are actually genuinely interested in helping other people rise, as well. So fast forward to now 2025, do you by chance know like the number of murals that you've done in total?
No, man. Like,
oh, wow, that many.
I think I get asked this a lot and I just never like follow up to go check.
Yeah, because they come down. Like people paint over them or like the building comes down or.
Yeah, I've only had that happen very few times.
Mm.
So I've actually been really lucky that like, I think that, when you did the intro and you said you've seen a lot of my murals around town, I think I've always just had the luck of things just lasting.
Mm.
And like, I think all the murals that you do see around town are just a compilation of like the growth over the years.
And it's also too the pride. I feel like people now in Southwest Detroit have started to develop a sense of not only just knowing, but also respect and appreciation for your work because you do represent the community and the culture So even not just on the outside of the buildings, a lot of your pieces are on the inside of restaurants, and so they become a part of the aesthetic, the experience.
Yeah, that's great, man. I never really think about it like that, and I appreciate that perspective because I never really look at that as a responsibility. I'm just grateful for people that want my work, and I feel like as a traditional perspective, I just feel like if anybody ever wants my work and has given me the opportunity, I'm just looking at delivering.
But you know what's so interesting is that I think growing up Hispanic or in a minority group, you always, in a way, not minimize your value, but you just see it as like, I'm just grateful.
Yeah.
But it starts to change as you start to develop in your career and you start to take notice of people, kind of your peers and people that, are in the industry. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on. You got how much for that piece? Like, wait a minute, hold on. You know what I'm saying? So you really start to reset the perception of what your value is. And that, I think, is like when the really cool stuff starts to happen, like the real growth, specifically for an artist or a creator. But I wanted to ask you, so one of your most recognized images is the skull, right? So how did that come about? When did it start? Where was the first skull like painted, or how did you do like the root of it?
I want to say the first time I really really started to like jump in on it was Murals in the Market. They had a big festival.
Is it Eastern Market?
Yeah. So this was, I don't know if it was their second year or third year doing it. It was my second year doing it.
And what year was this?
I want to say 2017, 2016. One of those years. I was doing something with the Pistons in the Eastern Market, like Shed 5 or Shed 3. I can't remember the closest one. We did we did basketball courts on the floor, and we did and we had like a whole like event with the Pistons there. And I remember like being so caught up doing that like I was supposed to also paint a mural as well that festival. And Rula, she's like, man, I love Rula. She's always been like the person that always has looked out for me and has given me projects since I first came up in the scene.
She's with the Pistons?
No, she's with One Time Run. She's with Murals in the Market. So she's a curator, and they own a gallery, and they own Spotlight, which is the bar that's...
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So they've always been like big art people. They love art. They love artists. They've fought tooth and nail to like make sure that there's murals and that we coexist in the city too. And I mean, I know it's not always pretty. I think that's maybe a big responsibility. I can't imagine the things you got to go through to make something, function. And
sustain.
Yeah, man. And so like I can honestly say that, Jesse and Ruler have been people that I've grown with. Like we've gone through a lot, since the beginning of my relationship with them till now. It's like we've grown together, like they've met me when I was a teenager,
that's how it happens, man. I feel like
as a little kid, man. And so like
some of my very first clients when I started 10 plus years ago now, like they're still my clients because it's like people that see that thing in you early on. It's like they saw it for a reason. Like it wasn't like they were just trying to, get a project done and just move on. They saw like something, like it's almost like, if somebody sees like a talent scout, like if they see a model or if they see an athlete, like 9 times out of 10, they're going to be a part of that talent's life for a very long time, because it's an investment. You're investing in somebody's purpose here on earth,
And they've been one of the people that like, they don't just give anybody opportunities. I had to learn, I mean, I think when you're young and you're hungry, it can create a lot of like entitlement. You get frustrated when you don't get opportunities and you see other people getting opportunities. So I've seen a lot of artists go through that and feel entitled and feel they need to be this or that. And one thing that I learned from my friendship with them specifically is they don't just give it to anybody unless they feel that they're ready. Like it's not just about are you good enough or not, it's can you sustain? And that's been one of the biggest lessons I learned in my friendship for over the years is I just had my first solo show with them, and look how long we've been friends, so it's when you're ready, and I think if other artists get to hear this podcast, you just let go of your ego and understand that like things take time and they require experience so that when you get there you can sustain.
It's huge, man.
And you'll be more grateful that when it comes, you'll be ready versus as like
energy is everything. People can feel it. Even if you are just like a 5-year-old kid, you can sense when somebody's got something special.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like people that are decision makers or are in positions where they can provide opportunity, they see that and they understand that like I see it, but I gotta feel that, like how you just said, they're ready for what's about to come. Because, I mean, imagine somebody that, like a young person that goes viral on TikTok, they're not prepared mentally for everything that comes with that.
Exactly.
They're coming with opinions, they're coming with schedules, they're coming with touring. Like, it's overwhelming. And if you're not ready, it's going to, instead of make you, it could break you.
I look at musicians. I look at fighters, prize fighters like boxers or MMA fighters. You have to have people that learn to manage your career, right? So that you don't just go straight to the championship off the first fight. Like you got to build your way up and learn the best abilities, your strengths and weaknesses, so that when you do get your championship fight, you're mentally prepared. You're disciplined enough. You can make weight. You know all the characteristics that are going to lead you there. And people don't I think there's not enough appreciation for the journey these days, because even with the way that social media portrays everything, everybody cares about the finish. Nobody really cares about what it took to get there. And so,
well, I'll say this: the people that care are the ones that want to be on that same trajectory.
Right.
But
I think that there's not so much of a spotlight on process these days. Like people just want finish. It gets consumed in 30 seconds and then what's next?
But I will say that people enjoy fast because people underestimate the human intelligence. Like, as technology develops, our human intelligence develops 10 times faster. That's why it's like when you see a young, 2 or 3-year-old literally having their finger over the bottom right of the screen on a YouTube video ready to press skip. It's like, we know, like as systems, we were talking about systems earlier, as systems and formats come into place, like the human mind just starts to process and recalibrate and understand, like, okay, I get this is how it works. A lot of times they don't fully understand why it works that way or how it works that way, but they just get it, So it's like with anything, like if somebody, is getting ready to start a career in in medicine or start a career in art, you're watching people that have done it before you and almost studying their journey, and then kind of taking, it's almost like going to a tool shed and picking the tools that you want. Like if you have access to all the tools, you're picking the ones that you feel are the most suited for you, and then you're doing it your way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the beauty of longevity, right? Is learning to keep traditions alive.
Yeah.
And learning to have inspiration and being open to be inspired. I think people kind of frown upon being inspired, and they want to have so much ownership off what they create. And I think, to one's credit, that's amazing if you can make something very unique. But it's also, there's no shame in giving people credit that have inspired you.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable enough to say you've been inspired, like. I think that the world works better when other people show you, like.
That's such a huge point, man, because I feel like a lot of times, like, people won't follow people on Instagram because they see something that somebody created, they're inspired, and then they're like, I'm not going to follow them because if I do something that looks like that, they're going to think I copied. And for me, I'm like, you know what, like, the truth is, like, I've created things in the past, and then I'll see, like, other brands doing something that looks like it, and I'm like, it's cool. Like, it's literally, it's like imitation is the biggest form of flattery. But I will say, to your point, that when people, it's almost like walking into someone's house without ringing the doorbell. If you want to be invited in, you have to ask for permission, So if somebody wants to use something that you created, they got to ask for permission, I remember having a conversation with you, we don't have to go deep into it if you don't want to, but there was a brand that was using one of your images for their benefit. And I remember thinking after that conversation that, that is something that is so common. Like, I remember even when I was an intern at the Tigers, there was someone specifically responsible. I remember asking her like about the process that would send out letters to people in Detroit that were using the Detroit D in their branding, because you can't do that. It's
Yeah,
their
they're
logo.
copyrighted.
It's
Yeah.
their copyright. So it's such a common thing because, you do have to protect your art, because if anybody just go, because the thing is, bro, like, especially for people like us that come from hardworking family, that we don't have access to all the resources in the world like other people do. When people take from us without asking for either like permission or partnership or, hey, let's do something together, it really does feel like a punch in the gut, because it's like you created something from the ground up and other people recognize it as something of value, and now they're just taking it. They may not have talent, but they have resources because mom and dad might have a ton of money, and they use that for their benefit, and it just feels weird,
I mean, yeah, I think I guess I can give you two different angles from that. I think one of the angles I can give you is, in the beginning it does feel that way, right? It feels like a punch in the gut, whatever. And I think that when you start to really mature and have a lot more growth and have a lot more awareness of where you are and what your abilities are, I think you also learn to just kind of give people credit, because anybody can take your art, right? But it's what they're able to do with their resources that even got the attention, right?
Yeah.
So to that, I give them credit. I think that if you can sustain a clothing line, if we're getting more into specifics, you can sustain a clothing line and be successful and make money and profit with your resources and finding inspirations from me or other Detroit artists around the city, more power to you. I think, I don't think I'm going anywhere, in terms of like my art and my artist. So I don't think it jeopardizes me. Maybe it could be benefiting me financially. But again, like, I'm not out there making clothing.
Yeah.
So I can't really, and that's just,
there was somebody that and this is funny because this is the same person that was responsible for the legal communication at the Tigers at the time for copyright. But she started a brand, and part of her brand involved picking up pieces of graffiti chips on the floor and then turning them into jewelry. And I remember maybe like the first or second year that she got started, reading an article about like graffiti artists not happy about what's going on with that. But she did the right thing, and she reached out to these artists and she developed a partnership with them, So I really think it does matter that you do understand the value of people and what they bring into this world, and understand that to a degree we have a responsibility to help lift those people up as well,
Well, and this is what sucks, man. I'll give you a harsh reality, and this goes to every creative. I think that no one's entitled to give you anything, and I had to learn that early. Since I was coming up as an artist, is no one's entitled to like your work, no one's entitled to buy it, no one's entitled to hire you, and the sooner you can get over your ego and understand that, the better off you'll be, and the more happier you'll create, because you can't create with the expectation that anybody owes you anything, and so. You're right. Like, there's always a correct way to go about it, but surprisingly, or just realistically, people don't really. It's very rare that they do. So I mean, I commend the person you're talking about. I think it's solid what they're doing. That they actually take the time to educate themselves, and if they don't, like, you can't expect them to, right?
Yeah.
For those that don't,
it's like it's kind of like, and this, I'll say this last point on this, but it's almost like when you buy a fake Birkin bag, people know it's a fake Birkin bag. You can flex like it's real, but people can still tell the difference. So that's on you.
That's why I always give community so much credit, because even when anything looks like fairly mine, I've always, like, people have shown it to me, and like, it's always people that are more mad than I am. Oh no, man, like, you can't let them do that. And I'm like, bro, like, as long as I have you guys and you guys support me and you guys know what my work looks like and you guys like my work, I don't have nothing to worry about. I'm grateful. You know, like I you can't let hate win in any situation, I think, or your ego, you know, like I've learned to just let that go, man. I learned to just be like grateful for the opportunities I have. Like you said it, just traditionally just be grateful and worry too. I have enough to worry about as is, like on what I do daily. Yeah. So I don't even, you know, partake.
There's an abundance and God's going to bring you what's meant for you.
Exactly. You know, and so like, and if I could create something that inspires somebody else that has made them successful, you know, more power to them, because like you said, it also requires, you have to have the capacity to handle the success, right? Yeah. So if they're doing it, you know, then they're not just only good at being inspired, they're good at sustaining the inspiration. And so like, that's where instead of me being, you know, egotistical and saying, oh, like I'm learning to put my ego aside and give them power, give them credit, you know, and in hopes of like, you know, in hopes that in the future, you know, they learn, you know, because if they can learn to be sustainable, they should learn as a brand to work with.
That's huge.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
huge.
So just instead of offering hate, I just want to offer constructive, you know, ways to be better, you know, and I feel like that's and I learned this not to be religious, right? But I learned this as just someone that has made a lot of mistakes as a youngin', is like, if you ever want to be forgiven, you have to learn how to forgive. Yeah. And so like, I don't move off like hate no more, man. Like I learned to just like forgive everybody and move forward, because I think that life is too short to hold on to things that don't really hold weight, you know? And if you do hold on to them, you're giving it more power than you need to.
It's something inside of you that has not breaking free from why you're holding on to that emotional baggage.
And the older you get, it's like the more you have to be aware, you know, and like not really let those things kind of dictate, because there's people that live like worse lives than we do, and they don't let that be their whole personality. Like they don't really like, oh, well, like I never grew up with parents, so like now I'm gonna be a total douchebag, or you know, like they don't let their fucked up situations make them into fucked up people. And so like, if those people can lead by example, why can't you? You know, why can't any of us? And so like, that's always makes me feel a lot. Again, I just end up being more grateful, and not just like move off of hate, move off of like ego, because it's like, bro, like there's no end to it, you know, like, and it's like, it's almost like gang violence. Like that's literally why people kill each other, bro. It's just ego. It's like, who's got more guns, who's got more muscle, who's got more power, who sells more.
It's even like, I was thinking about this the other day, because I don't drive on the freeway often, because I'm like close to the studio's close to my house, so I don't have to, you know, drive often. But when I do drive on the freeway sometimes during like rush hours, I'm like, wow, I can't wait till we get to the day where all the cars are controlled, because the reason, like, people sometimes are just not happy and they get on the freeway and they swerve you or cut you off just because they're not happy, you know?
You're having fucked up days and take it projected on you, man. And
so it's like a lot of times with the emotions that people are carrying around, they do things not even thinking. Like, you know, we had said off camera, talking about like, you know, people, they don't care as much as we think they do. You know, they're more focused on them and what's going on in their life. And we're just a character in their world, you know? So fast forward to 2025, from dollar store paintbrush or dollar store paint, what are the materials, techniques? Like, what do you use today?
Man, I still keep it like pretty simple to what I started with to what I use to this day. I think obviously quality of paint has changed.
Do you have a specific brand that you go with?
Always the Montana products have been really good. Also Flame. I pretty much use it. I use it all. You know, I don't really have a favorite. I think whatever's like accessible at the time, I'm just grateful for.
So is it a spray can? Like
So all these new spray cans, like I want to say like from 2010 and on, have all developed like a better pressure, a better valve system, so that when you push down on it, you get
control the spray out.
It's kind of like, and it's almost like, it's like it's very a lot easier to work, and I think that if you grew up on like the cheap stuff, like the dollar stuff, all that paint has really fast pressure and very watery texture, like pigment. So if you always have to move the can really fast, so that it doesn't drip on you, and you know, like, and then you always have to maybe double coat it. Or triple coat it if it's very thin, because it's watered down. You have to go really fast, let it dry, coat it like 3 times, And so like all those little, like those are all like little Miyagi like intros to painting, because when you get the good stuff, it's like day and night. So like if you learn to appreciate the cheap stuff, when you get the good stuff, like you can do
And
above and
are there
beyond.
like attachments for the head of the spray can, or is it? Wow.
So now they even got all the crazy stuff. Like now they even got attachments to the attachments. So it's like the attachment to the attachments to like relieve the stress you put on your finger.
Wow. So all your murals are spray can, or is it some paint involved, or?
I use house paint too, like bucket paint. I use airbrush a little bit.
Is that for the base, or like?
When they're really big murals, it's a lot easier to get the bucket paint and either spray gun.
What kind of paint?
I think anything latex exterior. I just use it just to fill in the big areas, because if you use spray paint to fill it in, like I don't know,
it's
like
gonna use up a ton.
You can use up a ton. You're gonna be burnt out of just like
going back.
It's just a fucking labor.
So you got like a roller to lay down the base, and then so do you do a graphic illustration first or sketch, and then you use that as a reference? Like,
yeah,
I always wonder, like, how do artists, muralists, make it look so symmetric?
I think it's evolved over the years. Before I remember, and a lot of people still use it, but it's like a grid method, where like they'll like take a picture of the wall, they print it out. Like this is old school, right? You print it out and you make it into grids, and then you draw over it with tracing paper, and then you kind of like scale it, right? And then now with iPads, you can just take a picture with your iPad and use the pen to draw right over the picture. You know, create a new layer, draw right over the picture, and then just turn the opacity down, and that's how you line it up. You know, you're just kind of almost going off whatever guides. People use the doodle. It's called the doodle. So you'll just make a bunch of doodles over the drawing, right? Turn down the opacity, and then that's how you have like that's how you can like line it up and scale it. And when I was in Mexico, people use tape. So they use little pieces of tape that they put all over the wall.
Wow.
Take a picture. And that's how they like, I mean, it's just to scale, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of like green screening. Like you're mapping out the area of a room or a space. So that way, because you got to also be factoring in like the subject, the background, because you got to match the light to the back. So you're kind of like mapping it out.
Exactly.
So I remember, or earlier you mentioned about the Oculus. Like people are now using the Oculus.
It's crazy. I think now you can wear the head kit, what do they call it, headset or visual
like
set?
Like the VR headset?
Yeah, and you can just have your sketch on the VR headset, turn down the opacity, and just paint.
Wow. And it's so precise that it's like you're actually having real measurement, like, wow.
Well, and if you move, the sketch moves with you, right? Like everything kind of...
Have you tried it yet?
No.
No?
I think...
Would you be willing to do something like that? Or do
yeah.
You feel like...
I feel like the intro to it is a little overwhelming, because you're like, damn, like... And this is like, I feel like maybe me and other artist friends are like, oh my God, we're going to lose our jobs to robots. They're taking over. But like, I think like anything, right? Like, you know, when DVD player came out, when we stopped using CDs, and like, it's like, if you don't learn to adapt, you know, then
100%. The second you stopped evolving is you start dying.
Yeah.
Like you become those old people when you were young. Like, oh, why do you still use a flip phone? Why do you do this? Like, you have to be constantly paying attention to how your craft is evolving and your space is evolving, because as new generations come in, those are the first things that they're learning, you know? So
and you can't be mad at them for using their resources. It's like, you know, like I had resources that artists that are 10 years ahead of me didn't have. And like, it sucks, man. But like, if anything, if you start to learn to have awareness and be like, yo, I'm grateful for everything you put in, because this wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
If you guys didn't pave it for us, right? So like, I think you do yourself more of an injustice by having an ego up and saying, I'm too good to use that.
Yeah.
Then you're just giving yourself a disadvantage, because 100%. Everybody else is going to use it, and then what are you going to do? Stay behind?
100%. You got to constantly be pushing the bar forward. Yeah.
And you're seeing a lot of people use AI now too for murals. Like people like literally tell AI to come up with a render.
Oh shit.
And then it helps like their creative process. I've actually used a little bit. You know, I just experimented with. Sometimes I get corporate jobs, so like the topics are a lot more like dry, and it's like, all right, how do I make my art more corporate, right? And so sometimes you have to, you know, whether it's chat or whether it's actual like rendering AI. I was just bounce back ideas like, hey, what can I do to make this better?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
And it's a constant creative journey. I
right.
feel like you're constantly trying to not just evolve your technique, but your vision, like how you think about things, how you want to portray things in your artwork. It's a constant evolution.
And it doesn't always have to be the actual artwork too. You can always learn how to do, improve on your process, improve on your steps of like, what should I do first? Should I do this? Should I do that? And all it does is give you
Bro,
information.
AI is the best, man. AI is the best. I literally have conversations with AI all day, every day. So you had mentioned corporate clients, and then earlier you had mentioned that partnership with the Pistons. When was the first? Was the Pistons was the very first like big partnership that you were like, oh, this is real, or was it a different brand?
No, my first corporate job was GM. It was I think it was Milford Proving Grounds. They have like a big like facility out there in Milford where they test all the cars. And I used to work in corporate. So, and I think I've said this before in other interviews or whatever, but long story short is, I'll make it short. I used to work in corporate, and when I decided I wanted to become an artist, I gave up my corporate like positions. But in my time in corporate, I've met a lot of people, like a lot of them that I still call mentors today, that kind of helped me learn how to like the business aspect of like logistics, like marketing, budgeting, networking, putting stuff on a calendar, meetings, all that stuff. Like, so I learned the like all the informational like part of running a business,
Right.
not just the art. And so I stayed in touch with one of my clients who was a big supplier for GM, and then there was an opportunity for me to do work with them. At the time, though, I didn't even have an LLC. I didn't have anything, man.
What year was this?
I want to say that was like 2011, 2012. I had just gotten out of high school. I graduated in 2010. So I had just gotten out of high school, and like, man, like it was like a really big project.
Wow.
And I was a little overwhelmed, but
How did it come about? Did they reach out? So it was somebody that you knew at GM that knew about your art.
that threw my name in the hat.
Oh,
And then they called me and said, hey, we'd like to get some artwork done. These facilities are boring. There's just gray walls, and like the workers, I think it would help their mood. And this was like, I think, right, it was obviously before COVID, but like I think corporations were already trying to make the intent to make work more enjoyable, because there was no work-life balance. Like,
so were these pieces indoor or outdoor?
Indoor.
Indoor.
So these were all in their offices.
Nice.
And so, and then I had a middleman, like a contracting company that helped me, with scaffolding, all the safety part of, whether it was like taping up all the floors, making everything like nice, and like putting plastic over everything to make sure like we have ventilation, we have, safety is number one. And so that was cool. I've never worked with another company before.
Wow. So this was at 18.
Yeah, I was just getting out of high school, so I didn't really know how to approach it.
Yeah.
And
so how did you go about approaching it? If this was like your first corporate partnership, and you're talking about outsourcing work to contractors, like that's a lot for an 18-year-old mind to kind of wrap their head around. Like, did you have somebody that was kind of helping you, or did you like start to do your own research?
I think a little bit of both. But I think ultimately, like if I was to give any kind of piece of advice, it would be just, and I don't know if this is good advice. It could work or not. I can tell you this is what worked for me. I think the biggest thing was that I was honest. I think the biggest thing was not, and I don't know if this works for everybody, right? But sometimes it might not. Sometimes people, if they know that you don't know enough, they take advantage of you. But in this situation, I got really lucky that they empathized with me not knowing enough, and I was honest to be transparent. And I think, even to this day, like I've always tried to be transparent with all my clients and just say, hey, this is, what are we working with? Like, what's the budget?
Yeah.
And if you give me
that's always the hardest conversation. And what I, at least for me, what I started to do was I started to approach it as, once you have the conversation with the potential client and understand the scope of work, then going back to your drawing board, you understand how many hours, what resources, like everything that's involved, and then you present them with a number. I think a lot of people, they try to, whether it's they're trying to set up a retainer or whatever, because I know some artists have like, that kind of format as well, they think about like, well, what are my bills? How much do I have to, acquire in order to sustain? And it's like, no, you have to think about project by project, because when you go onto a retainer, people think that, not everybody, but a lot of people think that they own you. Like, you're my employee. No, it's like when you're an independent contractor, when you're an LLC, you are your own entity, and somebody is utilizing your talent and resource the same way they would do to contract a developer to build a building. You know what I'm saying? So it's like art is just never been seen in that same way as much as it's becoming now. So I think that the conversation of pricing and budgeting is something that I don't know why for some I would assume for some people they don't want to have that conversation because either one of two things. They don't want to pigeon themselves into a corner and feeling like if I say this number, everybody's going to say that this is, they're going to think that that's what it's cost. And that, obviously you want to evolve. But I think too, it's also giving yourself the freedom to say, this is what it is today. And if somebody doesn't want to work with me a year from now because it's now double that, somebody else will.
Exactly. No, and I mean, I think like I was very green. So like my whole thing was admitting that I was very green and like saying, hey, like, because I don't even think I didn't have an LLC, so they couldn't pay me. So that was like the first like not red flag, but like just the first like alert was like, well, could you guys pay cash? They're like, no. Okay, well, you need an LLC. You don't have. I was like, well, what's an LLC? So like, instead of me trying to be like, oh well, I'm the most experienced, most talented artist. I might be the most talented artist, right? But these are things that I don't know, and I'm not too prideful to say I don't know. Like, and that was what really helped me. And in other situations, if it had been a different company, maybe they would have just screwed me over and been like, okay, cool, well, this is what we can give you if you want cash. And it just would have been like a fucking shit show. Yeah. But luckily they were patient. They said, no, like, we want you, so we're willing to wait. Go get your LLC. Go get clean. Because at that time I was smoking a lot of weed, man. So like, I was just young. So I didn't really have discipline, man. I didn't see it.
So like, they drug tested you?
Your hair follicle.
Wow.
Because you're on site. So you're liable if you fall, if you break an arm, if you gotta, wow. and they just want to cover. They're gonna insure you so that you don't have any.
Is that a common thing for any type of commissioned mural work?
Corporates, mainly.
Got it.
Murals, I think it's like I have my own insurance, which is my own like accidental insurance, but it's not like something that's like. And every now and then I get asked for an insurance certificate, or even with when I occupy equipment like lifts, you have to have like a license, to operate. But I mean, I've never really had any issues in any of that case. But I think getting clean was like the most like epiphany of it all. Was like, damn, like this is like this. That you asked me the question of like when did I start to get real, and I realized it was real. That was when I got real, because that was when I had to give up my old habits. It was like I enjoyed smoking weed, man. I was like a creative like habit that I had, and I wasn't like I didn't like, I'm not like a rowdy kid or like, so like I just like to lay back, smoke my weed and be chill. But like when I got this opportunity, it was like I can't be the same person I was, if I want more of these opportunities.
Yeah.
And so you had to give up, you had to sacrifice, and they waited. Like that was the thing, is like again, me being honest, yo, if you guys drug test me, I'm not gonna pass. I don't have an LLC. I don't know how much to charge you, and like, what do you guys need me to do so that you guys could hire me? Because I want to do this job. Them having the patience to be like, you need to do all these things, and we'll wait for you. And then I didn't have a contract, so I was like, how am I gonna write up a contract? I've never wrote a contract before, right? So all these things were like new.
And what's so cool is that now today, AI can literally just help you with all of that.
Right.
Like if this was like, this was in what year was this?
Maybe 2013.
So if this was just like a decade later, you would have had all of those like.
It's like 2012, I started 2012, but then it didn't happen until 2013 because like it took like, I had to get sober, and I had to get like literally, and it was cool because like even after, like I remember you had to give it up for at least 6 months to pass the hair follicle. And I remember like the day of, I took my drug test, I passed, And like the night of, we were like, oh, hey, we're all gonna smoke and celebrate. Like, I passed the test, and I remember like smoking again, and like it just wasn't me no more. So like I learned to give it up. Like I just
So you don't smoke at all?
No, man.
Wow.
It's just not who I am no more. Like I appreciate it. My friends that smoke around me, I'm never like an inconvenience. Like don't do that. I can be around it.
Dude,
I'm not.
And we were talking off camera about like, there's certain medications that exist in this world that help alleviate pain or help with people's certain conditions and stuff, but it's like a Band-Aid, And I'm not saying that or cannabis or anything is a Band-Aid. It's unique to every single person. Some people use it for, health reasons. Some people use it for, other medical reasons, you know what I'm saying? So it's like unique to every person. But I think what I'm so in alignment with what you said is that as you evolve as a human being, you got to stop and pause and reflect on who you are today. And if the decisions that you are making today are conducive to who that person is, then good, keep doing it. But if they don't feel like they support and are uplifting that person that you are today, it's not for you anymore. Right. And that's not to say it's a bad thing.
And for me, it wasn't like, and they almost, the way they worded it too, is like, it's not that we don't care that you smoke. Like, we don't, it's not that that's a problem. A lot of them
smoke themselves.
And that's not the problem. The problem is if anything happens to you, insurance companies don't care.
Yeah.
They're not going to cover you because either you have alcohol in your blood or you had weed in your system or any other drug in your system. So that's not going to hold up when you need insurance to cover you. And so, that's just them being transparent of like, this is why you have to give up these habits. And it's like, bro, that makes sense. Like for the bag, like why not? Like
everybody is protecting themselves as they should. Like as you start to develop in your career, whatever your industry you're in, you start to understand like through experience, the things that teach you the biggest lessons. And then you put it into policy. You're like, this is what I will do. This is what I won't do. And this is, why, because you may have been burned in the past, or there might have been an experience that completely made it impossible for you to give your best in that project. But through each experience, you learn more and more on like, what is the things that best serve me, And
that's how I feel like, and to bring it full circle to the first question you asked me, which was, how did the skull come about? So after I got projects like GM, fast forward, I got the opportunity with the Murals on the market and the Pistons. And I remember me finishing the Pistons courts, and Rula being like, oh, I was supposed to paint a mural that year. Oh, well, if you don't want to paint a mural, like, I get it, you're tired. Like, don't worry about it. And I remember being like, hell no. Like, I had looked up to, like, that festival and, like, wanting to do something. Because I had done the previous year, but I think, like, my building got knocked down, and, like, I felt like there was too much, like, influence on what people wanted me to paint versus what I wanted to paint. Mm-hmm. So I felt like this new year that I was going to get a whole new wall, I had an opportunity to do something I wanted to do. And I felt like Eastern Market lacked the presence for Latinos. I felt like there was no Mexican art in the festival yet. And there was one Mexican artist who painted the Busy Bee hardware store, Marca, my boy. But he was more like indigenous. So like it was nothing that like really gave like Mexico, like, like Chicano sauce.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, fuck it. I want to paint something that like kind of like pays tribute to my culture. And that was the first time I did the skull. And it's still up there. It's right next to Eastern Market Brewery. And it's one of my most successful murals because that mural, man, like I remember putting it on a Vans shoe for
what's that?
Vans had they had this pop-up in Detroit called House of Vans a few years ago. And I remember they had like this workshop of like you could create a shoe, and whoever won that day, they would give you a limited edition shoe.
Wow.
So I remember that shoe, bro. Like I remember being so like hype because they gave us that like in workshop experience of being like, oh wow, like I get to see my artwork on a shoe. I won the first day, or no, it was on a Saturday. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I played on Saturday. I didn't know about it Friday. Played Saturday. I won the competition Saturday. I got so excited. I went back Sunday, played Sunday, and won the competition Sunday.
When you're saying played, what was the competition?
So they would have a competition in the workshop of like everybody would create a shoe. and the best shoe, whoever got the most
So
votes.
they had to judge.
People would vote. Like it had like the most like whoever got the most votes, I'd get a one limited edition shoe.
That's cool.
So then they, I got two. I won twice. I won Saturday and Sunday. And then when I got my shoe in the mail, I was like so excited to have to see my artwork on a shoe that ironically enough, that weekend or like a week after or something, I had like a meeting with StockX. They were like gonna give us a tour and it was just me and a couple other artists.
Wait a minute. So what was on the shoe?
My art, the mural.
The skull?
The skull mural.
So that was the first time that you painted the skull was on that shoe?
It was in the East Market.
Oh, so the mural. And then
I took a picture of that mural, put that on the shoe. Just playing around just to see what my artwork would look like.
What year was that?
That was probably the same year that I painted it. Maybe 2013, 2014. No, 2016. I'm sorry. 2016, 2017. That was a couple years after the GM, obviously. It was already pre-COVID.
And then so StockX, how did that happen? Like, did they reach out? So I'm assuming that like all these people are finding you through the murals, and then they're finding you like DMing you on Instagram?
Through Murals in the Market, because Murals in the Market's always done a good job to like highlight artists. So like if any business is kind of looking for artists, Google Detroit artists
on the market.
Boom. Like the market page will kind of have a directory of artists. Or we just pop up on Google. And I feel like that's always been succession. StockX, I think they've always had a relationship with the people from One Time Run, and like I don't know. I mean, Detroit's always like been kind of tight knit. So if you're just making any kind of noise, it's not hard to like cross paths, or we're like 2-3 people away from anybody, right?
Yeah. So have you ever reached out to corporations, or are they usually reaching out to you?
I reach out more to people. I think corporations, I tag them.
Like who? People like who?
I reach out to other artists. Like if I especially if in other cities, like if I find like an artist, for example, my boy Scent Rock, I can give you an example. He's from Phoenix, Arizona, but he lives in Chicago, and he's like the man in Chicago. He's like does all the big brands. Muralist, creative. He works with the Bulls. He works with Lollapalooza. He works with like I don't know, like any big brand you could think of, bro. Like he's worked with them, man. He's kills it. And for me, I always feel like I like to pay homage more to the artists than the brands. I feel like if you want to really make an impact, and if you're about community, it's more about meeting the artists and meeting the people that are in those communities, making impacts versus the brands. The brands will come to the artists,
So when you say pay homage, when you reach out to these artists, how are you paying homage? Like, what do you?
I just show love. I'm like, yo, man, I'm a big fan of what you're doing. Is there any way that I can make
collaboration or something?
Or no, is there any way that I can be as impactful in my neighborhood? Like, what are ways that you think you can help me that I can do in my neighborhood? What am I missing? And sometimes these guys are older. Like Sunrock's at least got like, I don't know, a couple years older than me. So these people have knowledge, man. And like, you just, again, like, it's just wanting to kind of.
Is the reception usually positive, or like, do they respond typically, or is it?
I would say 90% of the time, yes.
Yeah.
It just depends, man, like what your intentions are. I've always, again, transparency is key. I've always just shown love, and like, and the times that I visit Chicago, I'm like, yo, like, let's paint,
I also want to say on that note, because I used to get offended when people didn't respond to me right away when I was younger. And I realized that when you reach out to people that have a lot of stuff going on, it takes time for them to get, because they're getting text messages, they're getting emails, they're getting DMs. So just to be patient. I think anybody that, should practice the same strategy you're doing and reaching out to give, flowers to other creatives, is that just be patient, because they may have like 10, 20, 30 projects going on actively at the time, and other media stuff going on at the time, that they just physically can't get to every single person. But it shouldn't mean that you shouldn't never reach out, because it might be 2-3 months later that they actually do reach out, and then they see your stuff and they're like, yeah, for sure, let's connect.
And also the big thing I told you is don't have any expectations, right? Don't feel entitled that anybody needs to respond to you, because who are you to them that they needed to respond to you? So like I always go out with like no real expectation of anybody. I think that I'm grateful that they've always like shot back and showed love, at least the majority. But also, man, like it's just sometimes it's just being curious. It's like, yo, like, how did you go about this? Like, I really want to do something, maybe not similar, but like, I'd really like to be like as resourceful. Like, how can I be better? You know, and
Yeah.
it's just, you're literally not even trying to make it anything to put yourself on the same level as them. It's like, that's how you give flowers. It's like,
It's so easy to share wisdom. So easy. You know, that's one of the reasons why I started doing video, you know, documenting my ideas, because I'm like, you know, for one, I grew up just being super introverted, but then when I realized that business is literally just conversations that lead to negotiations. And if you can have conversations with 100 people in one day, that's not sustainable. But what you can do is film your ideas, your mind on camera, and then 100 people around the world may see that in one day. And then it starts to stack up, and those people start to understand the way you think, which lead to those negotiations, you know?
that's cool. I didn't know that, man. Like, I usually don't overthink it because it's like, again, like you had, like being an artist, you just have to learn to be grateful to coexist with no expectation. Like, you know, if people notice you, cool. If they don't, like, just be grateful you got the opportunity to do it. Like, you know, like I look at what my parents had to do to just have a living in this country.
Yep.
And it's like I don't think that they were fully passionate about their careers, right? But it was out of necessity. So like now that you have an opportunity to make a living off something you love, like why like feel like anybody owes you anything more? You know, like
Yeah.
it's just having that awareness, you know?
You know, it's easy to forget that, you know, there's an abundance in this world. There's what now, 7.8 billion people or plus in this world now. I mean, even if 1 million people become your biggest fan in the world, that's still less than 0.001% of the population.
I seen a TikTok and I just reposted it like a couple of days ago, but it was like, I don't know why social media gets so many people caught up like with, like, it's just a weird like place because some people think like 20 likes isn't enough. But like if 20 people were outside your house and they all said what up to you and like all like acknowledge you, you'd be happy as fuck. And it's true. It's like, bro, like in hindsight, just because on paper doesn't look like a lot, it's a lot of people.
It's huge, bro. Like,
you know
and especially when you're not trying to be an influencer that is just. And let me find a respectful way of saying this, is that when you're a person that leverages your appearance for attention, there's nothing wrong with that. But appearance changes over time, you know? Yes, you may get all this attention to your platform and people may, you know, not be super nice. Some people are going to be super nice, you know? But if you're building a product and you become that product, you're the brand, you know, you don't need 1 million people to be your customers. You literally can sustain your life with like 100.
Yeah.
So if you have 100 followers and those are consistent repeat customers, like you're good.
Exactly.
You know? So I think that point that you just made about like perspective is so important.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like don't get caught up in like what you don't have. Like I think if you learn to be grateful for what you do have and learn to be present in the moments that you're in, then you can learn to sustain anything that comes after. Right?
100%.
Because if you just can't expect like everything to happen overnight, and if it did, would you be able to sustain? And it's like, I mean, and this goes in anything. Like I've learned this in my relationship as a partner, right? Like when I was single, I'm like, oh man, like when I settle down and I get my partner, I'm gonna be the best person I can ever be. And it's like all that shit sounds amazing until you're in it with somebody, and it's like they get to see you for who you are, you get to see them for who they are. There's no like, you know, like it's complete vulnerability.
Yeah.
Now what are you gonna do? Now everything, your whole plans are out the window because everything you thought you had on lock, it's like everything changes.
Yeah.
Continuing to grow, continue.
Yeah.
So it's like you just learn to be grateful, like learn to be like don't think and don't set like these high expectations. Kind of have like good like I guess good mediation, right?
Yeah. It's so in parallel too, because it's so important to remember that people change just like times change. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You don't have to be the same person you are today 10 years from now. And if this person or this partner or this, you know, colleague, people fear losing. I don't think we ever lose anything or anyone. I think that we just graduate and evolve into new dimensions or whatever you want to call it. And it's just part of evolution, you know? So you mentioned earlier your experience in marketing. I'm curious about like, what are some of your social media strategies, techniques that you leverage?
I think just be relatable, be simple. I think it's so weird, man. Honestly, it changes all the time. I don't think I have like anything that's like a structural way. I just kind of just make sure that everything that I post, every work that I do is something that I would like. I guess the way that I market has a big influence in all the work I make, because if it's something that I'm not willing to share with people, then maybe 99.9 of the time, unless it's a really big payday, then it's not worth, like, I shouldn't be doing it. You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean by that?
Because I feel like when you get to work with big corporations, it's very easy to get sidetracked into making artwork that's a lot more diluted. It doesn't really identify with your brand or with who you are as an artist. Because some brands could get the misconception of like, we want a artist, not you. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not looking for the artist, this artist. We're looking for a artist. And so I always ask that important question of like, do you guys want to hire me for me and what I do, based on what you see that I do? Or do you guys just looking for any artist? And so there's a big difference, right? Because I want to attract people that want my work. So
what's usually the response on that?
People love that. People love that because I think a lot of times, man, like, because there's not a big structure for art, a lot of corporations don't know what they want, right? So like, even if the project doesn't work out and we don't work together, at least you leave them with a little bit of knowledge. They can take that back to the drawing board, and then next time they approach a different artist actually wanting their art, you know, like, and so there's nothing wrong with being constructive, you know, like, and even sometimes when I work with projects and we're putting together a budget, I ask them for the full transparency so that I can help them put it together, even if it costs me losing money, right? Like if half of more than half of the budget goes to production, and whatever budget they have for the artist, it cuts into my budget. Who cares? Like, at least I helped you fulfill your project. It gives me more satisfaction than feeling like you guys used up all your money on me and then still couldn't complete the project because, you know, you guys were off by. Yeah. So it's like, no, like if you guys are honest with me, then I don't mind, like, you know, sitting back a little bit. Or even if you're just starting, like, I can give you an example with Modelo. The first time we ever worked together, they had a van that they created where they did like pop-ups all through different like locations in Detroit, and we did like workshops out of the van. And it was like, I think they had like $1,200 the first time we worked together. And it's like, if I was like this entitled, like, bougie artist, I would have been like, no, that's nothing. Like, I can't do nothing with that, right? But me being transparent with them was like, well, what do you realistically, how much money do you guys have to do this? And they said, well, honestly, this is all we have. We're just starting out. We need to create this. We need to create the content and present to our main, you know, client. They kind of explained to me the way it works is like, we create the content, we present it to our boss. Once they see that what we can do with this amount, then next year we can submit for a bigger budget. So it's like having that transparency with companies will allow you to build a relationship with them, you know? And so like, if you're able to have like I feel like that's always been the key. Again, answering the question of like being fully honest is like, when I didn't have an LLC, when I didn't have a contract, when I didn't have all these things, it's like being honest and being vulnerable kind of helped them help me. And now it goes vice versa.
And it's, people don't know until they know.
Exactly.
You know, I think you really made me think about something, because I'm like, I didn't know that artists, because when you think about it, if Nike wants to do a partnership with like, or Adidas wants to do a partnership with Kanye West, they want the artists, you know? So it's like now that same conversation is happening with contemporary artists, muralists, like all these different types of art mediums that I think corporations, they have their objectives, you know, they know what they're trying to achieve. You cannot undervalue yourself in order to get the opportunity. But I will say that it is important that you have to understand that sometimes putting in sweat equity into a relationship that can turn into something bigger is so important to practice that humility, because you never know what could come. I'm assuming that first project that you had with Modelo, it transitioned and grew into something else,
Man, we had a partnership for like maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They're really great, and honestly, they're grateful for me. I'm grateful for them.
Yeah.
Because maybe in the first year we didn't make a lot of money, but then afterwards it was good money and consistency.
And also what was happening at that time was awareness. People were finding out about you. Right. Because Modelo's a well-known brand.
Exactly.
So it's like if they're putting you on their platform and showcasing you to their audience, that's beneficial to you.
And also just within the company, because if you are a person that's accessible and you're looking to grow and you're looking for, and this is something that my dad taught me, was like, yeah, you could charge per job, because my dad likes to get paid hourly, but his whole thing was, yeah, you could charge a lot for a job and you might not get called back. But realistically, or you could charge per job, but what if the job doesn't work out and you have to do it all over again? You're going to have to pay out of pocket to fix it. Versus if you pay hourly, like if you charge for an hourly rate, you build consistency. And where I'm trying to group this all together is, I don't necessarily charge hourly, but I look to have more consistency in work than to just price myself out of jobs. I think that that's something that a lot of artists should look into. Is, hey, like, get over your ego. Like, maybe you deserve all this money, right? But realistically, what's more important than having a ton of money is having consistency. That's how you're really going to develop as an artist. You're going to give yourself the resources to continue to grow and stay busy. And it's like, I'd rather be busy all the time and have stuff to do and grow within the projects and build relationships than to just think I'm worth this much and you get like maybe 4 or 5 calls a year.
The more you do, the universe is going to keep bringing more and more to you. And those opportunities are just going to keep growing and growing and growing. I think that, to your point, if you go into it with this idea that I'm too good for that, then the universe can hear that.
Right.
If they're like, oh, you're too good for that, so we're not going to send you this. We're not going to send you that. We're not going to, But that thing could have been a thing that changed everything for you.
Right.
Like if for an artist that's featured on a song, like think about this. Like if there's an artist that thought, oh, I'm not going to do this song with, this new artist that's just coming up. What's her name? Ariana something Grande. She's just coming up. I don't know her. I'm not going to do this song with her. And then fast forward 5 years later, she becomes the biggest pop star in the world, and you're kicking yourself in the butt for passing up on that collab. You know what I'm saying? Like, just do it. If you have the time, do it, because you don't know what's going to come from it.
And just, and look at I think the overall thing is, if that person's talented, because I work with anybody, right? Like, it doesn't matter who they are, right? I think I'm willing to work with anybody as long as it benefits us both, right? And so, going to your point too, on one of the things before I lose it, one of the things you mentioned was the contracts and the intentions behind corporations. And artists getting opportunities because they look for the artist. One of the things too that I recommend artists to look out for is the writing. I think when you get a contract, I think we should all have a lawyer friend that looks over it, and you should seek one, because sometimes when these companies are reaching out to artists, we're not Kanye West, we're not Drake, we're not Kendrick, we're not these big artists.
We don't have a big old team of lawyers.
Well, and we're not and we're not like someone that we're not as in demand as they are, right? So like the contracts that they would get aren't the contracts we're gonna get. And what I mean is now you're getting a lot of contracts that are work for hire.
What does that mean?
Meaning that if I do a collaboration with you, right, and I'm a big brand, meaning I own the rights to your work. I buy you out of the work. But so you're work for hire. You create this work for me. I hired you to make this work for me. If I own this work. And where you have to be careful as the artist is, like, if you sign off a work for hire, they own your work and they can release that work at any time, make money off of it at any time, and you don't know they own it.
So just power.
So you have to have at least the understanding to be like, if you're cool with the work for hire, you better be cool with the payout.
Yeah.
Right? Like at least the money has to make sense. If they're gonna buy you out, it has to be for a good price.
Yeah. Even if you think and for people that are probably thinking, watching this, thinking, oh, like, what if I can't afford a lawyer? Like, I think for that, I think anybody first find out how much it costs. Don't stop from moving the ball forward without even figuring out how much it costs. And then two, if you can afford a lawyer, then upload that contract to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT a prompt that says, hey, please skim through this contract and let me know if there's any things that I should be concerned about.
Right.
And
some lawyers don't charge until you get paid anyways.
Yeah.
So like, I know if you let them know, hey, like I'm negotiating with this client. Could you read this over? And if it looks good, and when I get my deposit, I'll break you off, bro. Like, most lawyers are cool with that. I have lawyer friends just through family or through the years. I've developed friendships with lawyers because they get excited of like, oh, you're working with this brand? Like, I'm interested to see what that looks like. And so some lawyers just get a kick out of it. And it doesn't take them too much long to just read over something, especially when it's copyright. Like, it's like standard stuff that they do every day anyways. So like, it doesn't go, like, if they go out of their way for you, like, I don't think it'd be a very expensive thing to do unless they don't know you and they don't care about you. But realistically, like I always say, just try to go through a lawyer friend, and if not, just offer the option to be like, well, if I don't got, like you said, you could use the AI, or you could use pay after you get paid. Like, as long as they make sure that everything looks good, it's ready for you to sign, and then you could pay a little bit of your deposit. And that's worth your saving. That's worth covering your ass. Like, I'd invest.
Even too, using your resources, like how tying into your point earlier, where you're reaching out to other muralists. Like, if somebody's in the city that is looking to get started in Southwest Detroit and they have access to you through Instagram, just reaching out to you and be like, hey, like, this opportunity's coming my way. I was presented with this contract. Do you have anyone that you would recommend that I could talk to, like a lawyer? You know what I'm saying? Because that's huge.
Yeah, man. And I can name like my boy Ramon, for example. He does murals. Every now and then he'll hit me up like, yo, how do I do this? Or, they're asking me for this. I'm like, bro, like I have no problem giving that knowledge, because it's like, bro, I was there before, and like, I think the more artists exist, the better the market like stabilizes and the more opportunities are for everybody. I think it's the opposite of like, oh, I want to be the only artist. And then, no, like, on the contrary, I want to see more variety. I think that if it was just me, it'd be overkill, man. Like, I don't want to just see my artwork in the neighborhood. I want to encourage more people to have opportunities and get their art out there, so that we have more power, we have more of a bigger voice. And I think, even imagine if there was only one rapper. Like, you go to Spotify and you go to rap genre, there's only like one or two. Like, bro, you need variety so that everybody could have a fan base, and we can dictate, who we like more, who we like, and then you just give young generations more confidence, to like hone that craft and actually like strive for something. Because that was what all it was for me. Like, I mean, I didn't really get to see like artists succeed necessarily or have accolades, but like, I got to see them be super creative, and that made me want to do it. I'm like, that's enough for me, so. If people see me having brand opportunities, I hope that motivates them to want to like take it to that level to where they're getting opportunities. Why not?
So in addition to, looking through the contract and, reaching out to an attorney, what other piece of advice would you give to like an emerging artist or somebody that's looking to get, some real traction in this space?
I think when you're first starting out, I don't think you should be so money driven. I think, you're not going to obviously be able to finesse the contracts that when you have more experience you can. But I think it's okay. I think you have to learn to accept that, hey, I'm just starting out. I can't take the money that I see other people making. I think also, I think that the consistent rule plays along big with them. Like, when you're just starting out, you want to have more consistency than money. And
so should they just be trying to find property owners to let them create? Should they do it for free, or like what?
I don't think you should do it for free. I think you should get paid some money, even if it's not a whole lot. But I think you should maximize those opportunities, whether it's like, getting them to making sure that they tag you on their business pages, making sure that you make the most out of it. You make sure you make a video, or, get somebody to come out and take pictures. Try to capture as much content. Try to maximize as much as you can out of each opportunity, so that and it could open up more, and I think I think if you're just starting out, don't let people really dictate your creative process, like in terms of what they want you to paint. I think that you should stick to the stuff you want to do. Be open minded to people's suggestions and maybe bend a little bit, but not fully, because I think that when you're first starting out, it's very easy to do anything anybody wants you to do because you just want to paint. And I think that if you learn to have your identity early and find yourself as an artist early, you can attract all the projects that are meant for you and not just a bunch of spam of work, you know, because I've always had, like, I'm very grateful since I was young. I've always had a lot of work, but it wasn't necessarily always work I wanted to do or that paid very well. And the only way to like improve and like evolve from it is by learning to say like no. And, you know, not every project, you know, requires you to say yes, you know, and it's okay, bro. Not all money is good money. You know what I'm saying? Like, just understand what really fits your, you know, like your brand, your vision, where you think you can really grow as a relationship. And those projects will attract more projects that are like consistent with you. Because at the end of the day, you're gonna look back like I did this year or for 2024. And I really like reflected. I'm like, damn, like maybe I wasn't as busy outside, but I was busy in all around. Like this year was my most versatile year. I was doing stuff on handbags, doing stuff on footballs, doing stuff on canvas, doing stuff on, you know, like I wasn't just outside doing murals. It wasn't just a mural season for me. And I felt like that was I felt accomplished because I felt like I got out of my comfort zone. I think the most like expected year for me would have been just a year full of murals. Like that would have been like the most like straight route to take. But I picked up so many different challenges along the way that when I look back and you reflect, I'm like, damn, I'm very grateful I did that because that opened up a whole new market for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I would have just stuck to murals, I would have grown as a muralist, right? And as a market in murals. But I think not really having all your eggs in one basket could be very great as you start to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're first starting out, it's important to go through a straight line and build some consistency and strengthen those talents like directly, and then you can pick up different stuff. But I think for me, like it was key, you know, either I travel and go other places or pick up different mediums and challenge myself in other ways so that I can get new markets, you know?
That's great advice. I think when you're getting started in any industry, I think focusing on, you know, one or two things in the beginning, like the things that you feel so confident about that I'm like, I could do this all day, every day. Focusing on that, and then time will present all the other opportunities.
Exactly, because each project will teach you something. I learned each project for me is a different setup, different hours, different routine, different drive, different. You know,
you're also learning too. Like, what do you like? What do you like today? Like, you were talking about, you know, working with footballs and handbags and all that. Like, that could be something that transitions into a whole nother opportunity for you that you may not, like, if you were just solely focused on murals, your mind would have never even been able to go there.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And I mean, sometimes things happen on accident, right? Like I didn't really look for it. It came to me. But I think just learning to be open to change, you know, not like, again, like things are going to evolve. You can't just stay behind on like, well, I only do this. And it's like, just learn to just adapt and be grateful because these are people that see potential in you and to do other things too, not just what you're so used to doing. And I started off doing graffiti and I never really thought I'd transition into murals. And from murals, I think I transitioned into, you know, canvases that footballs or handbags. And so all the things just kind of like conspire to each other. But overall, the overall thing is just remaining busy and staying sharp and just, and just challenging yourself, not staying stagnant, right? Because that's how you grow. Like I think just getting out of your comfort zone, and then in life too, right? Like, you know, again, I mentioned my partner, but it's like, imagine if like, you know, I've been with her for 5 years. The whole 5 years we just did the same thing every year, every week, every month. It just things change.
It's boring.
You got to change. You know,
life is about having enjoyable experiences, like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I equate it to growing. You know, so it's like growing isn't easy, you know, like I always say, like when you go to the gym and we were saying earlier, like when you first start, it's hard. It's hard to stick to it. It's hard to get into that routine until you slowly start to find your rhythm, you know? So I think that That's great advice. What's next for you? Like, what's coming up that you're excited about that you can share?
I think one of the things I could share is we're gonna do auto show. I have
Oh
like,
man,
yeah, man, we're doing like we got a booth. Me and my Fox Teca, they're like this organization that like highlights black and brown. And they're, man, they're awesome.
black and brown artists.
Yeah, just in general,
Nice,
creatives.
man. What's it called?
Fox Teca.
Hot stucco.
And so they're gonna have their booth inside the auto show, and they asked me to bring in 2 cars from the neighborhood, and then I'm gonna have my artwork. So
Nice, man.
that's one thing. I don't know if the other 2 I can share, but 2 brands, and then I'm going to Mexico for January, the end of January, and then I'll be working with another company that's a pretty big company. And then man, honestly, I don't know. I think
I'm so excited.
Once the
for you,
season
man.
starts, like I think I just
And we were talking too about like product lines. Too.
Yeah.
So that hopefully
So yeah, I guess I could touch on that. I hopefully in the future I want to make, tap into clothing. I want to do stickers more. I've already made stickers. I have some in my car I can give you. And then just having stuff accessible for people to buy, just so that, like it's not just murals, because
bro, I see like plush dolls, I see like all kinds of things. Imagine, like, think about if today Diego Rivera had, like, how you have the skull? Like if Diego Rivera had, I mean, he does, he has like images that when you see, you're like, oh, I know that's Diego Rivera. But here in Detroit, you walk around and you see a lot of Frida, Diego, like murals and stuff. But the Latin culture doesn't have like a Mickey Mouse.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like your skull could become the Mickey Mouse of our community.
I think the closest thing we ever had to anything represent Latino was Speedy Gonzalez, right? And maybe
yeah. But that wasn't local.
Yeah,
that was like large scale. I'm talking about like, I think when I look at your artwork, man, I just see such like enormous creativity and possibilities. Like there's so many things you can do and ways that you can take it that the sky isn't even the limit, So I just think that as you start to develop in your, as you continue to develop on your journey, I think that as you're doing now, you're allowing yourself to explore different things and, let your mind go different places. A lot of things are going to start to present itself to you and everything is going to start to align, So I'm excited.
I appreciate it, man. No, I think, I guess another thing I want to look forward to is just building a team. I want to say from this year moving forward, I really want to hire more people to get, to have a presence and to help me like be more organized and help them, give them the opportunity to grow whatever they want to do, whether it's the marketing, whether it's helping me on murals so that they can do their own murals, whatever, I really want to be like a resource and I really want to be helped too, like.
I want to say on that note, I heard somebody once say that, and I may not quote it exactly right, but it's along the lines of God created, and I mean, we all were created for a specific reason, So when people try to, or I'll say it this way, when people don't value what somebody was brought here to do and they try to create their own version, I think you're disservicing yourself. Because if you could bring someone in, and I'll give a more concrete example of this, like when you move into a house, right? You can reconstruct the entire house yourself if you have the skill set. But if you're somebody that has a full-time, responsibility and you're taking away from what your God-given gift is to do something that you can hire somebody else to do that may be way more efficient, way more faster, know all the techniques and strategies that are today current. I'm like, so instead of trying to do everything yourself, I think it's so important for all of us to, when we have the opportunity to create more opportunity for people, why not? You know what I'm saying?
I really think it does take a village. I think it really goes unnoticed. I think any big brand that you look up to has a team of people working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think even me, man, I'm just grateful because I owe a lot of my success that I've had over the years to a lot of other people. Like I can't take all the credit. Like I'm grateful that my work is where it is, but I don't think I would have the capacity or near the experience had it not been for people giving me opportunities, right? So like I think that's another misconception of that people get is like people see me succeed and people be like, oh, why is he there? But like they don't realize the contributions that other people have played in their role for me to even have that opportunity. Because a lot of times it's not just one, man. It's someone behind the scenes, like from the people that like your stuff to share it, to the people that go tell all their other friends about you. Those are the people that like are the reasons that all of us artists have like any kind of notoriety or any kind of presence is through a community of people that look out for us. So like to think that we're one man army is like very naive, you know, like and I'm very grateful. I know you mentioned something spiritual, right? But I'm really grateful. I think I asked, you know, I've always been like I'm not super religious, but I do believe in God. And I remember when I went to Europe, because that's where I took off my career. Is I left Detroit when I dropped out of CCS, and I remember asking God, I'm like, yo, like, don't like, please God, like, could you give me the opportunity to like really show myself what I can do and what I'm capable of. And I necessarily didn't ask him for a handout, but I asked him for the opportunity to learn and to be and to give myself like to show me that I can do this, and he granted that for me. Yeah. And so like I think it's important to meditate. I think it's important to like really talk to the universe and speak what you want into existence, because you never know. Even if you don't believe in God, it could be somebody that is listening. You never know who's listening or who's watching, and I think that's where the universe could be so powerful, because it'll conspire to anything you want to do. You know?
I think the most important thing is connecting to yourself. Once you connect to yourself, whatever you believe in, you're connected on a whole nother level, you know? Well, I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you,
I appreciate your talent. I appreciate you being here. I can't wait to see everything you do in the future. Thank you again, man.
Appreciate you, bro.